It is our dear colleague and friend, Dr. Minh Lo-Cicero, from the University of Madeira in Portugal, who is also with us for several years now. This is such a fantastic person. Allow me to be personal. This is such a fantastic person in terms of her own personal story. So when we talk about interculturality and what we do in ENIEDA, this lady embodies ENIEDA. This lady is the epitome of what ENIEDA is. So it was so important for me to finally have her here with us on the panel. The second reason is her topic, because you may sort of think when you look at the humor, really? Tolerance and humor? Yes. Why? Well, Minh will explain everything, but I really want you to think sort of more seriously about it. Becoming a more tolerant, open-minded person through understanding other people's humor, humor through other cultures, cross-culturality in humor, very important and a very complex issue. This is exactly what Minh does in her academic life, and this is exactly what I was so insistent. I absolutely used all my persuasive techniques to actually make sure that she's here with us today. So without further ado, Minh, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm not so fantastic, you will see. So my paper is Understanding Humor Across Cultures and Languages, a contrastive approach. So first of all, I would talk about jokes' purposes during feudalism and a contrastive approach. So the humorous mainspring is based on denunciation in a satiric and or ironic way during feudalism, in which tremendous injustice touched modest, poor and humble people. So created humor transmits social messages in a light manner. Nevertheless, not only they convey deep and significant messages, but also critical ones against oppressing, powerful feudalists. So consequently, it is the holder of rich and meaningful messages. Humor symbolizes or represents the weapon to emit critics against defined targets. So I will present three interesting jokes with some observation to be made for each joke, because each one has its significant meaning in feudalism time in the Vietnamese society. So one must not forget that humor, which provokes laughter, could be viewed if only one belongs to his or her own culture, or to his or her traditions, habits, and to his or her native tongue through jokes. Humor transmits a significant message and symbolizes people's voice during that critical feudal epoch. The contrastive approach is obvious. It concerns the joke's analysis, as I possess a double nationality, French and Vietnamese, which implies my total or nearly understanding of the two languages and cultures. So to this end, divergences or convergences will be described through my observations at some issues which are relevant to elements such as concepts, traditions, habits, society, and culture. So according to Soares, à propos de la pragmatique contrastive, il ne s'agit pas seulement de décrire telle ou telle langue, mais de rendre compte également de l'usage de tel ou tel élément, d'expliciter sa valeur dans le contexte. So I would like to quote Mr. Gunter about pragmatics. It is really in the context. So it is in this direction that jokes will be told, described, and analyzed during the critical feudal time. So as one knows, jokes are told or written to provoke laughter, especially in a brief oral or written narrative with climactic humorous twist. So to do that, people have to create jokes to mock at the ruling feudal class, to enjoy themselves in their life, and also to criticize their negative points, and to criticize different categories of personality in the Vietnamese society, such as the Buddhist monk, who else? The King of Hell and the Great Mandarin, who are in my three main jokes. So these three characters were often represented to be ridiculed by the people. Humble poor people represented oppressed people, whereas the ruling class were the oppressing people. These were opposite classes, of course, the poor and the rich. So the struggle was intense and violent during the period of feudalism. So I would like to begin to demonstrate jokes through different linguistic means. So the first one, the tofu which bites. That monk was eating dog meat on the sly in his room. So the Buddhist novice learned it. So he asked the monk from outside, "Master, what are you eating in there?" The monk answered, "Well, I'm eating soya cakes." At that moment, some noisy barks were heard from the temple gate. The monk asked the Buddhist novice, "What's happening outside?" "Master, the village tofu is biting our temples." So the Buddhist novice answered, "How this title comes into existence? As for semantics is concerned, one cannot understand why could a tofu bite. The title makes us laugh, but we don't know why because it is very odd." So the Buddhist monk's image is a respected figure, as you know, who sacrificed himself to have a wise life and a life of praying and meditation. He's vegetarian. Tofu in Vietnam and elsewhere symbolizes the main food for vegetarians and particularly for Buddhist monks. So the joke's title is interesting to explain thanks to the linguistics calculation. So I skip this because it is very long. So the linguistic path is as following. Tofu is dog meat. The master monk says that he was eating tofu. Tofu is dog meat. He lied as he knew he should not eat dog meat. So he substitute dog meat by tofu. Obviously, the association of the word tofu and dog meat has nothing in common as regard to lexicon and semantics. So the context illustrates clearly that lexical and semantic association provokes laughter, of course. One laughs because of the monk's behavior, as well defines the word caricature in its second meaning. Caricature is a description of a person or thing that makes them seem ridiculous by exaggerating some of the characteristics. So you know the different procedures to create laughter. These lexicon and semantics relationship illustrate the contrast theories. So the monk and dog meat, two totally opposite meanings. So one can observe that dog meat could not be replaced by chicken or pork, for example. Then humor will be minimized and the satirical feature would be less efficient to create laughter. So one observation, dog meat in Vietnam is not everyday meat. It is for a special occasion. So in summary, the most important and fundamental parameter in creating humor is the lexicon and semantic, le lexico-sémantique. So Tambamesque definition is important as regard to my linguistic approach. Semantics is the study of meanings of words. It means that the lexical semantics limit the meaning of words considered as the units of significance in which the meaning is based on the meaning of languages. Laughter is triggered by concluded by the novice monk's flag and attitude, which suggests sarcasm, irony, and most of all concerning his dry sense of humor, c'est-à-dire de la remarque pince sans rire. So joke 2, don't say anything more, it makes me my mouth watering. There was a dog, again the poor guy, killed for his meat, and when he went to hell, he was introduced to King of Hell, Yimvu. He asked, "In the barren land, what have you done to be killed?" I don't know. I was standing there and they hit me on the head with a hammer and bang! So I was knocked out. And then they put me into boiled water. And afterwards they shaved me entirely and I was all white. Afterwards, after shaving me, they grilled me until golden, then ripped, washed, and they took my tripe to prepare sausage, which was so perfumed, so excellent. As for my meat, they grilled it and prepared minced meat, which smelled pretty good. Then they make a soup with the ribs, and the tenderloin they pan-fried it, which became very fatty. They added mint leaves, onions, and garlic. Regarding the liver, they larded it and fried it, an overwhelming succulent flavor which subjugates your nose. Yim Vuong waved his hand and told him, Stop, please, don't say anything more, because it makes my mouth watering. It's terrible, yes? So this story, as you know, shows the excessive greediness of Yim Vuong, king of hell. Because he is responsible for the hell world, asked the dog why he died. So while explaining in what condition he died, Yim Vuong told him not to tell anything anymore, because it makes him mouth-watering. So what is horrible, to my opinion, and humorous at the same time, is the tragic situation of the dog. So at first one laughs because the dead dog knows how to speak. And secondly, the way of the dog's death is described with the details by itself is horrible, but at the same time funny, because he tells it with incredible flame, as it were not him, but another dog or another person. So the descriptive details are atrocious, but at the same time very appetizing for the listener, the king of hell. Hence, the sudden interruption of Yim Vuong in the conversation, and for good reason. So, in joke 2, I have just presented, this is not at all Yim Vuong's case. On the contrary, he represents the very opposite of what he ought to be, that is, to say, a gourmand, a greedy man, contrary to the virtue of Buddhism. So lastly, Yim Vuong, a figure of virtue in the world of Buddhism, also behaved like the ordinary people in the lower world. It means that he likes the dog meat. So towards the victim, the dog, he has no scruple about telling that his mouth is watering. What a shame. When the dogs tell him his very sad fate. Contrast elements in joke 2, don't say anything more, it makes my mouth watering, are summarized in table 2 that I skipped. So it is very interesting to have an observation about this. There is an expression worthwhile to highlight, but with the translation in English or in French, the reader could not perceive it profoundly. An overwhelming succulent flavor which subjugates your nose. In French, odeur succulente qui subjugue vos narines. But in fact, it is not the right translation from Vietnamese. One can translate it literally, this sentence fragment, as follows. A succulent flavor which could make your nose deaf. Do you understand deaf? All of a sudden, so what is the relation? However, that translation cannot be accepted, of course. Vietnamese again like to play with the lexicon and semantics. This sentence describes that the flavor is so succulent, it could even block your nose. It is because there is no other words to describe. So, with that singular description, it provokes laughter. In reality, deafness applies to ears, the lack of smell or olfaction to the nose. By combining wrongly the senses with organs, deafness nose makes people laugh more. So, about the language register, so I will pass. Mainly among the jokes, there are always the hierarchical between the superior and the the inferior. You notice all the time, it is the main element that we would not forget. We shouldn't forget, chiefly in the Vietnamese tradition. What do I wanted to say? So the kings of hell's last words are shocking and unexpected. The dog told his sad story, being killed atrociously. The king of hell's logical reaction to be thrilled, terrorized with listening to the dog's a sad story. It is no need to analyze more. You know what is the conclusion. And I would like to mention about joke 3. Cook children gruel to eat. So gruel is kind of soup with rice. That year, a famine was spreading everywhere. A mandarin was ordered to make a tour around these villages to see the people's situation. When he got to that village, the village chief informed him, "Great Mandarin, the famine is still here. A lot of families have no more rice to eat. What makes you so stupid? Why haven't you told them to cook chicken gruel to eat?" Can you imagine? No rice, and then they have to buy chicken and so on. So you know the procedure is the Mandarin is totally incompetent. So what do I want to say is about, let me see, two main procedures is the association of different universe or totally opposite elements to create laughter, and the second one is the allusive discourse. So, but I have to skip about broad-mindedness through jokes. Broad-mindedness brings better society. Denunciation of negative points in feudal society is significant and important to improve people's life. The expression "take a joke" is very interesting to comment. To be able to laugh at a joke against yourself is interesting because it is a kind of self-criticism which was and still is in any society, chiefly under socialism, in which sensual motion is strongly practiced in our society. And then I will conclude: humor, tool of criticism; humor, tool of entertainment. One can observe that humor is not only closely and necessarily linked to joy, but also to sad situation, and for that reason I would call dark humor or black humor. And my last observation within the jokes, it is the interrelationship between interactions is always the different status partners, superior and inferior. This factor is fundamental to trigger laughter. Family ties and social relations are highly hierarchized. In the Asian people's culture and traditions, namely Vietnamese, which is expressed by a series of terminology which shows that the upper class or the lower class. And the definition of humor cannot be defined in a complete way. However, we can summarize in a few words. Everything that refers to things, realities, strictly speaking, to create humor, we must provoke what is abnormal, shocking, contrary to standard realities, such as theories of contrast, through lexicon and semantics in general. And then I will end. Humor analyzed in this paper is not, so I already tell this, according to Rebout's definition, l'humour consiste tout simplement à traiter à la légère les choses graves et gravement les choses légères, which means humor consists simply of dealing smoothly serious matters and seriously minor ones. Thank you for your attention.